Hello and welcome to this CMS Back to School question and answer session. Our topic is the full remote academy, and judging by the amount of questions we received from this community, it's a very important topic to you and our families. And I want to start by saying, if you visit the CMS website, www.cms.k12.nc.us, and you go to the recent news column, you will see a link to full remote learning parent information. That information is translated into multiple languages and also includes a video discussing this topic. And after this Q&A session, we will add to that so you have even more information about the topic of full remote academy. I just want to remind you that the registration for the full remote academy ends this Sunday, July 26th at 11:59 p.m. And one more thing I'd like to point out is that each school in CMS has an outstanding leader in the principal's office. And if you have specific questions for your school, reach out to your school for those answers. This Q&A session is a deeper dive into some of the questions that you have about the Full Remote Academy. And we've had over 280 questions. We won't be able to get to them all today, but we will do our best to give you the answers so you can help your student and your child make a good decision for back to school this fall. The Q&A session, like I mentioned, is a deeper dive, and we've assembled a team of CMS officials to answer those questions for you. And we want to just jump right in with the first question. And as we go in that, I'll introduce who we have with us. So first, we have Dr. Frank Barnes. He's the CMS Chief Equity Officer. Thank you, Dr. Barnes, for joining us today. So the first question we have from the community is, why are these two options necessary? And that's the full remote academy and the virtual academy. Why are these two options necessary? And why can't everyone start remote and then students remain remote if they choose?
That's a great question, and good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. When we began starting the plan for this upcoming school year back in May, we always knew that we had to plan for many different public health scenarios. Perhaps if the virus had been completely contained and we got back to life as normal. If the virus had been slowed and the curve was flattening, we had to plan for that. And we also had to plan in the event that the pandemic recurred. And so we began our planning, and as we were beginning our planning, the governor announced that he wanted to see 3 plans produced by every school district in the state: a Plan A, a Plan B, and a Plan C. And those 3 plans lined up exactly with where we were going. As it turned out, the governor recently announced that the state would open with Plan B. He articulated when he made that decision based on public health information that he had available, that any school district could implement Plan B or Plan C, or even a combination of the two, but no districts at this time could implement Plan A. So we began in that direction. Our school board, informed by you constituents, as well as with public health information and thinking about the needs of both our staff and our students, said we were going to have a modified Plan B plus. Have us start out with a couple of weeks where we would start with school with a group of students coming and rotating in so we could socially distance and try to be as safe as possible, but then going fully remote until other conditions changed to allow us all to come back in some form or fashion in accordance with what was happening here in Mecklenburg County, as well as throughout the state. But no matter what our plans were as we began or what we anticipated the governor would announce, we always knew that there would be a set of families that they would not feel comfortable sending their children to a brick and mortar school building, no matter what the public health conditions or the governor's plans. So it was really at that time we began to develop something that we had then later called the Full Remote Academy. So we always knew that there would be some set of circumstances where at least a portion of our student body wouldn't want to come back and would want to study remotely. So that's really why we have the 2 different options. One is a dictate by the governor. A second is a choice by our school board, both informed by the best public health information they had available. And a third was thinking about our parents and our families and our students.
So Dr. Barnes, what's the real difference between Plan B plus, as it's been called, and the remote learning after the first 2 weeks? Because you know there's the onboarding for the first 2 weeks. So after those first 2 weeks, what's the difference between these two plans?
Another really good question. In one quick sentence, there's not much difference at all. They're both high quality options. Allow me to pull up a slide presentation and show you about 3 to 4 slides to make my point so you can see the similarities and differences between the two. What I want to be able to show you here, and hopefully our listening audience can see my screen, is when you look at the curriculum that students are offered in either the Plan B plus remote or full remote academy, the curriculum that students will be exposed to are the same. The learning platform that they'll be using will be the same. It will be a Canvas learning platform. Access to magnet programs will be the same, and the types of things that students would be learning in their magnet program will be comparable as well. The way we grade will be the same. Access to specialized services, whether it be talent development, English as a second language services, or exceptional children services, will each be offered and available to students whether you're in the Plan B remote or the full remote learning academy, or the full remote academy. And social emotional learning will also be a focus and be available in both options. Participation in athletics in each whether it be Plan B remote or the full remote academy, will be available. And participation in either of these options, either Plan B remote or the full remote academy, will still allow your student athlete to participate in something that she's passionate about or he's passionate about without compromising their NCAA eligibility. And even the clubs and extracurricular activities will be available. So in many ways, these are very close and similar. So I share all that to say that either option, we can go into why someone would choose either one a little bit later, but really they're both very comparable once we get past that 2-week orientation.
Great, thank you for that answer. I want to bring in Kim King. She's our Director of CMS Virtual Learning and Media Services. Thanks for joining us in this conversation. I would like to know, can you provide a breakdown of synchronous versus asynchronous learning with the virtual aspect of Plan B, and kind of help us understand what that looks like? So a synchronous and asynchronous.
Yes, and I actually just got this question in an email from a parent who specifically told me and highlighted it. Tell me what it means, but don't use those words. So just like to start off, synchronous is live instruction with a teacher. So when students are Zooming with a teacher and they can talk to the teacher can talk to them, kids can talk to each other, that is synchronous learning. Asynchronous learning is everything else. So the asynchronous learning is some of that will be recorded instruction, that explicit teaching. So students can have complete control over how many times and when they get that explicit teaching. If they need to watch something 3 times to wrap their heads around it before they tackle the independent practice, they can do that. And then, of course, after they've done that, that independent practice is another part of the asynchronous learning. So that might be work on the computer, writing a story or any number of things, or it could also be paper pencil. It can be using math manipulatives and showing your understanding that way. It can be coloring a picture that reflects what you heard in a story. And it's, of course, for every grade level, lots of independent reading. So all of those pieces together make up the asynchronous instruction. The synchronous, which again is live with a teacher, is going to have time for students to reflect and interact with the ideas that they learned during that asynchronous time. So the teacher can clear up misconceptions, students can push on each other's thinking, and there will be a big focus during that synchronous time on social emotional learning. So that will be from K-12, every single student will have synchronous social emotional learning time to really build relationships and make sure that our students are functioning well in this challenging environment.
Great. Thanks for tackling that question. But I have another question, and this is, can the students who remain under Plan B, we know we have these onboarding days coming up for the first 2 weeks, can the students who remain under Plan B simply skip those 3 onboarding days? And if so, will there be a benefit to guaranteeing teachers from their own school? So first of all, can they skip those 3 days?
So those are required days, and if students miss that, they will be counted as absent, and they will still be responsible for getting to the school in order to get the supplies and materials that they would have gotten if they were there in person. So that's kind of the logistical answer to that question. But I think something that is important for parents to consider in asking themselves this question is what is happening during that orientation time, whether that's in person or whether that's remote. That orientation is about setting norms and expectations and building relationships within that cohort of students and that teacher that will last. So that's pretty important for students to be able to be there for that initial building of relationships and the foundation. So every family needs to make the decision that's right for them, but I think that to consider the purpose behind that orientation is very important.
Okay, and that question also, will there be a benefit to guaranteeing teachers from their own school?
So if families are wanting to stay with the Plan B option simply to ensure that they have a teacher from their own school, I would say that most students in the full remote academy will have a teacher from their own school. Okay. The only time that would be different is if a certain grade at a certain school had a very small cohort of students, and so 2 small cohorts needed to be combined in order to have a full-size class with a certified teacher. Or if there were a small number of students who wanted access to a certain course in middle or high school, students might be cross-enrolled from across different schools for that course. Other than those 2 situations, students will have a teacher from their own school. So, and if they are cross-enrolled, they will have a certified teacher who is qualified to teach that course. So, yeah, I think those elements are important for parents to know.
Great. So I think this is a pretty common question, and I thought the same thing when I first heard about this. So why can't all kids just go remote? And then if they open up schools, can kids sign up for in-person or remote?
So our principals have been waiting very, very patiently for the information about which students will be in each option. And that information is needed before we can answer a lot of your other questions. So parents, I know you're like, why can't we get all these answers now? Some of these won't be answered until principals are able to say, okay, I know how many students need this. I know what teachers can teach this, and kind of put it all together and make it take shape. And that also affects transportation and supplies. Like there's a lot of things that come as a result from those decisions. So we need that information so that we can put staffing and transportation and everything else in place. And then if in 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, people were like, let me switch options, a lot of those plans would kind of turn very chaotic, and we would not be able to guarantee that your students are having the learning circumstances that they deserve. So we need that information in order to put a good plans in place for your kids.
Thank you for clearing that up. I want to bring Dr. Ann White into the conversation. She's the Associate Superintendent of Exceptional Children here in CMS. Thanks for joining us today. The question is, what about children with IEPs will they still get their services in this online academy?
Yes, thank you. So excited to be here tonight. And yes, the full remote academy is open to all students, including students with disabilities. They will be able to receive all their specialized services in the full remote academy. That includes services for EC students, students receiving L services, 504 services. And when you think about the IEP, that includes the instructional services as well as related services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech. So yes.
So I'm sure a lot of our community is familiar with the great work that's being done at Metro School. What about special schools like Metro Schools? How will the learning take place in this full remote academy for especially schools like Metro School?
So again, the full remote academy is open to all students, even students with disabilities who are in separate classrooms, such as the extensions program. That's the program that we house at Metro, as well as in separate classrooms at individual other schools. And we will have the extensions program at the full remote academy, so those students also may participate.
Okay, and our community wanted to have you answer this question. Will EC students sign up under Plan C work with the same teachers and specialists that the student was assigned from their home school district?
Yes, so our goal is that they will be able to work with the same teacher, but being very realistic, it will depend on the enrollment. We'll be looking at the numbers of students with EC services from each individual school that enroll, and if we have sufficient enrollment, absolutely. If we have to have an EC teacher teach students from multiple home schools, then certainly those teachers would be collaborating with the regular ed teachers as well as the previous EC teacher. So all of the EC services will be provided by fully qualified teachers, and in best case scenario, if enrollment shakes out the way it should, then those would all be from their same home school.
I know teachers had a lot of love and a lot of respect during the remote learning that took place when students were out of school around March 13th of this year. And we know our parents love our teachers. Dr. Barnes, this question is for you. If a student signs up for the virtual academy, will they be guaranteed a teacher from their current school?
We'll make every effort to get that student a teacher in her home school. In some instances, in some scenarios where we have a relatively low number of students registering at that home school or magnet school, it would be only in those instances where there would be cross enrollment to fill out that cohort of students for that particular course or grade level. We'll first try to figure out how we can cross enroll within the same learning community. And then if there isn't capacity at the learning community level, then we would look out across learning communities. But our first and foremost priority is to get a student matched with a teacher at her home school or magnet school, and then only go out beyond that if capacity restraints required us to.
Now that question was for the virtual academy. Will that be the same for the remote academy, the full remote academy?
I didn't think I understood, so please forgive me. That answer would be for the full remote academy. Under our Plan B option, B plus option, yes, with all certainty, a student who was going under the Plan B plus option, just what we would regularly be doing after the board's decision, they would have a teacher at their home school or magnet school.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. So they're the core courses that seem that they would be easily taken care of around our schools, but we've got some questions about electives. And Dr. Barnes, I'm going to ask you this, especially for high school students. What will high school electives look like in the B plus and also the remote academy? How will the high school electives, how will they look?
They'll look pretty much exactly the same. Students will have access to all the courses, whether there be a Plan B or in the Remote Learning Academy. They'll have the same access to courses that are electives. However, I think we all have to acknowledge that some electives don't lend themselves well to remote learning. So in that instance where something just didn't translate well because you need to be on site using certain manipulatives that would only be available in a lab or a studio, in those instances, we're going to have to figure out what that looks like. But that learning experience, whether that be in the Plan B remote plan or the Remote Learning Academy, would be the same. We're going to try to offer all the courses we can remotely, but to be honest, Donald, there's just some things that aren't going to translate well.
That makes sense. Dr. White, I want to ask you this question in regard to honors classes. A lot of our students take these classes in middle school and in high school. Will honors classes be available in the full remote academy? And you're on mute.
Yes, absolutely. Honors classes will be available in the full remote academy.
All right, well, let's talk about for the elementary level. We have accelerated and TD learners. So in the full remote academy, how is that going to work? How are you going to meet their needs?
So at the elementary level, the TD services would be provided just as they have been in regular ed, which would be through some sort of a resource or pull-out option. When you get to middle and high school, that's when TD services become more advanced courses like honors or AP or IB. So we're able to meet the needs of our accelerated learners, both at the elementary level as well as middle and high.
Thank you. And last but surely not least, we want to bring in Ms. Akeisha Craven Howell, who's the Associate Superintendent of Student Assignment and School Choice, into this conversation. The community's asked quite a bit of questions, and we want to bring your expertise into the round table, so to speak. So if a student starts with the full remote academy, and then CMS opens up facilities for in-classroom learning, can they change? How does that work?
Yeah. So thank you, Donald. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Certainly we want to allow our families the option to switch between Plan B plus and the full remote academy to make sure that we can guarantee the most continuous learning experience possible. We are limiting that change to the semester break. And so families will be able to request to make that change. That is mid-December when the semester changes over. And so they would be able to make that change at that time and switch either to full remote from Plan B or to Plan B from full remote at the change of the semester.
So this next question is about IB. And on a personal note, I have a son who's a rising 10th grader at East Mecklenburg, and we love the IB program there. Yeah. So will IB magnet schools or will IB magnet students be guaranteed the IB curriculum in the remote academy? And that
Absolutely.
Even includes the things like foreign languages. So you just answered that.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that our IB students have worked incredibly hard in a very rigorous curriculum, and we want them to be able to continue that. I would say, in addition to international baccalaureate magnet programs, we also want to make sure that we have a continuous experience for our students in all magnet programs. So whether that be language programs or STEM or arts, we want to the best of our ability, recreate those magnet theme specific learning experiences during this remote learning time. We have teachers from our magnet schools who are engaging with us in building remote courses and remote learning experiences so that we can make sure all of our students in choice programs, whether they be in Plan B plus or full remote academy, still get to experience aspects of that theme that they opted into.
All right, this next question is for you, Ms. King. If a middle schooler who is scheduled to take high school courses for credit signs up for the full remote academy, who will be teaching the high school level courses?
So that will depend on how many students at that school are requesting that same course. If there are enough students to warrant that course being provided by a teacher from that school in the full remote academy, that's what would happen. If there's only a small number of students at that school, but there's a small number of students at multiple schools, those students can be combined into a cohort that all need that same course and can be taught by a certified teacher in that way. And then if there was just a very small number period and there weren't enough to combine into a cohort, then that option can still be provided through an external provider. So for example, NCVPS is one that we've worked with frequently. So that could be an option.
Okay. So the middle schoolers will have some options to take those high school courses for credits at that level. Another question for you, Ms. King. I heard that learning time during a day would be 6 hours. And this community member says, I feel that's way too long for a student to concentrate in a home environment. What are your thoughts about that? They heard that the learning time would be 6 hours.
So number one, the 6 hours is a state requirement. So for us to count this as school, we have to adhere to the state requirements in that way. I will say that I agree with you. 6 hours is too long for any of us to sit and focus in one go. So just like in any regular school day where students are with us for 7 hours, there's never a situation where they are sitting in a classroom focusing without breaks for that amount of time. So if you are expecting of that of your child, everybody is going to be miserable. So number one, the instruction that we are providing is intentionally broken up to give students a variety of activities, built-in breaks, built-in active interaction. But then, of course, you know your child the best, and so it makes sense to help your child structure their day so that it works for everybody. If that means they watch a 15-minute lesson and then take a break and do some laps, that's fine. You can set this up for your child to be able to be successful.
So the full remote academy, and this is a question coming in, is going to require more independent classroom study. And you can tell me what your thoughts on that. But how many hours a day will an actual teacher be teaching my child via Zoom compared to the Plan B option?
The lift for teachers in the Plan B option or the full remote academy are the same. So those teachers will be teaching synchronous learning the whole group, and then also small group instruction. So while students are working on asynchronous learning, the teacher would also be pulling small groups during that time. But the lift would look the same in both models.
And I'm going to bring Dr. White back into the conversation with this next question, and it's about grading. Are there any grading differences between being in person versus the remote learning versus the virtual academy? So it's basically about how are kids going to be graded? How are our students going to be graded in those three different scenarios?
So I would just refer back to the slides that Frank shared with us at the beginning of our conversation. And you might remember that grading is just the same between the two models. So there are not differences.
Thank you. And I'll go back to you, Ms. King. It has been mentioned that there are 6 hours, 2 hours synchronous and 4 hours asynchronous. Is that the way it goes for the lower grades as well, from K to 2?
In all levels, we will be sticking with that ratio of synchronous learning to asynchronous learning in order to give students the chance to interact and have that live time with teachers and peers. So that will look consistent. What will change, of course, is the level of work that is asked. So all of the instruction is being provided at a very developmentally appropriate level. So synchronous live time and asynchronous time for a kindergartner will look very, very different than it would for a 10th grader.
Got you. Okay. So let's talk about supplies. Will students who choose the online academy option be provided supplies such as textbooks, workbooks, those type of things?
Great question. Yes. So very shortly we will be coming out with guidance. Many schools already have provided some guidance on supplies that families can make sure they have. But we will have an opportunity prior to orientation. We will have an opportunity for families to get not only the supplies that you mentioned, but also their devices if they don't already have them from last year. We'll need to get our K2 students their iPads and our 312 students their Chromebooks. So we absolutely will be able to get supplies into students' hands, and our community partners are also assisting with that. And I think it's really important for all of us to consider the things that we take for granted having in a school. You know there are scissors, you know there's tape, you know there's crayons. And so we're being very thoughtful about what are we asking students to do and what do they need to have in hand in order to get that done. So we will make sure that every one of our students has the materials needed to complete their work.
I want to thank everyone who's responding on our Facebook Live page in the comments section. We do have our staff available to answer questions. So if you have some questions about the full remote academy in this Q&A session, please address them in the Facebook comments and we will have someone answer those questions. So let's get back to answering some more questions about the full remote academy. And Dr. Barnes, I want to ask you this question. Can you provide us some information on what the middle school remote academy will be like for the middle schoolers and kind of give us an example of what that looks like?
Sure, I would like to. To do that, Donald, I want to ask permission to share my screen again, if I could.
Sure.
I want to thank the listening audience for their patience. And here we go. So what you can see here is actually what the middle school experience would look like in the Plan B+ remote would be comparable to what would be in the full remote academy. There'd be some time spent each day on kind of social emotional learning. There'd be an English language arts period as well as a mathematics period. And that English language arts and mathematics would be a mix of kind of real time with the teacher, where there would be a chance for interaction back and forth or between classmates, and then there would be some independent time as well, both English language arts and mathematics. There'd be a mix of science and social studies, and they would alternate every other day, which you see. And then there'd also be an opportunity for electives, which I know we talked about electives before. And then there'd be the healthy active child would be a sum of about 30 minutes for that full experience. I know there have been some questions that I saw coming up in the chat about the high schools, so I want to show you that as well while we're here.
Okay.
And what you see here in the high schools is that every day there would be 45 minutes dedicated to social emotional learning. We know this is a challenging time both for adults and students, so we want to make sure that we're building up those muscles around social emotional learning for students who are participating in both the Plan B+ remote as well as the full remote academy. Courses would be shorter under our block system, where there'd be 75 minutes per course every other day, kind of that A-B schedule that would be taking place if you were there face-to-face in a brick-and-mortar building. In those classes and those core courses, there should be at least 40 minutes of instruction that would be synchronous, kind of that face-to-face live instruction or video per class per day. And so that real-time interaction would be there. There'd also be opportunities for independent self-paced, which would be a complement to that 40 minutes of instruction. And those would be available there. Also, in some instances, I know that Ms. King mentioned North Carolina Virtual Public School, NCVPS courses. We'd make sure that those were available as well, where we had opportunities to broaden our offerings to students. So in short, going back to that middle school experience, to the first question you asked, is there'd be a structured day that every student would be going through. It may not fall in this order in the particular school schedule, so I don't want to mislead parents listening about that, but they should expect to daily have that social emotional learning experience, English language arts, mathematics, science and social studies every other day, and they should still expect electives.
When we were trying to find out what plan we were going to go with, there was a plan B, which meant that students would go in a 3-week rotation, A week, 2 weeks off, B week, etc. So in that 3-week rotation, so they would be in school for one week and then out of school for 2 weeks in that plan B. Can you describe what those 2 weeks out of school, what does that look like virtually?
It would look exactly like everything that we've been describing here, whether it be for the full remote academy or the B+ plan. For that 1 week where that group was on, if we were under plan B and you did not choose the remote academy, you just came back to school with all the rest of your classmates, you'd be there for that 1 week. But then that remote experience would be the same as under B+, if you will.
Okay, so I know a lot of parents will want to know about that information if we were to go to that plan, because some parents would want to know, are we simply going to keep them out for the entire of the school year? If we do come back, what those 2 weeks will look like. So thanks for asking that. Ms. Craven,
Mr. Tate, can I answer one more thing?
Yes.
Now, I think it's important, if I were a parent sitting at home, I might really be asking, so given our current circumstances, why would I choose the Remote Learning Academy as opposed to just stay in the Plan B+ experience? And I think that would be a good question if they were to ask that. The point you just made is so distinct that if, say, after 6-7 weeks and we're in October, and our board, based on public health metrics, decides to go to Plan B, the big difference would be if you did not choose the Remote Learning Academy, your young people would be going back to school every 3 weeks, physically to the brick and mortar building. However, if the board, say in 7-8 weeks based on public health metrics, did go back to Plan B and you were in the Remote Learning Academy, you wouldn't have to worry about sending your children to that brick and mortar building. You wouldn't have to worry about any kind of interruption of your child's instructional experience, and they would continue to have that same remote learning experience that they had under B+. I think that's an important distinction, so I'm glad you raised that in your comments.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes, for making that point. So here's a question a lot of parents want to know. Why is there such a short sign-up period for the Remote Academy? The registration ends this Sunday, the 26th. And I'm going to ask you, Ms. Akeisha Craven, why such a short period as the community wants to know?
Yeah, I know it feels short, and like we're asking parents to make a relatively big decision in a short time frame. But the reason that we're asking our families to do that is to make sure we can adequately plan for the learning experience of all of our students. We know that there are some families, for example, who've already decided that Plan B+ remote is what they want for their students next year. And because of that, they want to know, will their student be in Group A, Group B, or Group C? We can't have our principals to do that matching of teachers and students and putting students in those cohorts until we know which students are opting into the full remote academy as well. And the reason for that, again, is that continuous learning experience. We want to be able to match students and teachers that will continue throughout the year, regardless of the way that we're learning, such that those students who are in the full remote academy, they will be in that cohort for the entire year. Students who are in Group A, B, or C and part of that Plan B+, they will be in that cohort with that teacher for the year, whether we are remote and when we come back to in-person. So it really is about making sure that we have the runway to adequately plan for the learning experience of each of our students. I will also add, however, that if we have parents and students who have not yet enrolled in the district, and we encourage all parents to do that as soon as possible, But if we have families who are new to the district and enroll in CMS after July 26th, they will still have the option to choose the full remote academy if they so desire.
So, Ms. King, I want to bring you back into the conversation. A lot of parents have asked this question about synchronous learning, and will that happen at the same time each day for students in this remote academy?
It's a really good question. Consistency is really important for kids and for families. So they're not trying to figure out each day when and where am I supposed to be. So the full group synchronous learning will happen at the same time every day. And that time will be communicated by your individual school. It will occur during your school's normal bell schedule. And so that's another item that is waiting to be decided once our principals have all the information they need. So the synchronous learning for whole group will happen at the same time every day. There's one small piece that may be a little more flexible, and that would be the small group synchronous learning. And the reason for that is that those small groups are based on exactly what students need. And so that may change and adjust as the year goes, or there might be a group of students that need small group instruction maybe 3 times a week. But the teacher would very clearly communicate what that schedule would be ahead of time so that families would be able to plan on that.
This makes me think of our students with disabilities and the way in which grade level teachers work together to create an instructional day that includes both large group and small group instruction to serve the specific needs of kids. So while we don't have those schedules worked out now, we know that the teachers will work together to determine the best time to pull students for their EC services or other students for specialized services.
All right, so here's an important question that parents want to know. Will there be an orientation for the full remote academy where kids basically get to meet their teachers?
Yes, there definitely will be an orientation for the full remote academy. Number one, we're going to have to let students get to know each other, get to know their teachers. Families are going to need to know who's teaching their children and what that's going to look like. So all of that will be really intentionally built out. Additionally, we know that we are going to be asking students to use a number of digital learning tools to support their learning all year. And so we'll have to roll those out in a developmentally appropriate way. So we're not just throwing things at kids and expecting them to pick it up overnight.
Dr. Barnes, I have this question for you. So end of year testing requirements for the remote academy students, since they will not be on campus, will those end of year testing requirements be waived in any way?
Donald, thanks for that question. Whether in the Remote Learning Academy, all of the testing requirements that are applied to other students would also apply in the full Remote Academy. There's a lot of details around end-of-year testing and other state-required tests that we're still getting information from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. There are a lot of parameters and requirements for testing, and to be honest, our state's still trying to figure a lot of that out. In addition to ourselves being remote after the first 2 weeks, Wake County is going to be remote. Durham Public Schools are going to be remote, and other districts like Chapel Hill, Carborough are also going to be remote. So a large portion of the state's trying to figure out the same kind of questions around testing that we will. But allow me to just affirm that whatever the testing requirements are for the regular student, if you will, in our regular school, in the remote learning, full remote academy, those same testing requirements will apply to them as well.
Thank you. Dr. White, I want you to see if you can answer this question for us. Will asynchronous work be self-guided? And this is for the younger students. So will our younger students, will they have to self-guide themselves when they're doing asynchronous work?
So this is a question that we've gotten a lot toward the EC department. A lot of parents have been concerned and interested to know how heavily must they support their students when they are learning in a remote setting. So what I'll say is this: our teachers up the grade span will create learning that is developmentally appropriate for those students. Certainly, instruction in a 10th grade class will have students more independently engaged than a first grade class. That said, the first grade teachers are going to be using developmentally appropriate practices. So with the face-to-face live instruction, they'll be very much engaging. They'll design the asynchronous work to be building on skills the students already know. And as they move through instruction, they will be teaching the students the technology skills and the independent learning skills that they need to be able to work on their own. However, we all know that our younger students are going to probably require a little more hands-on help from mom and dad or whoever's in the home with them. So yes, to some extent, it will require some parent engagement, but it will be developed and delivered in a way that builds independent learning of our students.
Thank you for answering that. I want to ask this question to you, Ms. Craven-Howell, and this is, well, let's see how you answer this question. What are the criteria, case counts, trends, that CMS will be using to determine whether the Plan B plus remote students will return to in-person learning under Plan B or Plan A?
Yeah, it's a good question. I certainly understand why families are interested. I will preface the answer by saying, in all of these decisions, our board and superintendent and staff have been really focused on the health and safety of our students and our staff. And so that has been the biggest driver of all of our decisions about our learning for next school year. And that will continue. The superintendent has developed a working team, which is both internal and external. So we are relying on our partners in the county health department, as well as medical professionals in and around Mecklenburg County to inform, which metrics we need to be focused on, as well as informing how those are changing specifically for Mecklenburg County. We will also look internally at our own operational metrics. So at what point do we feel confident that in all of our facilities, we are able to accommodate both students and staff in a way that is safe based on the public health conditions. So I'm sorry that I can't be more specific right now, but certainly families should expect that information to be forthcoming.
Thank you. Ms. King, this question is for you. In our experience, as a community member has just expressed, every teacher uses Canvas differently, and I'm sure a lot of our parents know what Canvas is. Can there please be much more consistency on how teachers provide assignments in Canvas?
Yes, great question. We know in March we turned on a dime and went remote, and that looked a little different for different teachers in different schools. And that was a challenge for a lot of families. I actually heard that exact challenge expressed to me from a principal who is a parent of a middle schooler in CMS, and they just really struggled with the inconsistent structure. So that's a really great question. You are going to see a world of difference in what is coming to families this year. So every single course will be delivered through Canvas, and the structure of every single course will be the same. So students will be able to navigate smoothly and build independence. They'll always know where they need to go to turn in assignments, to see their independent work, to get to the lesson for that day, to get to the links to meet with their teacher that day, to get to the schedule. Everything will be built out consistently for every single course. And we actually have some resources coming to our families very shortly. So we've got some videos and documents that will kind of walk you through what that looks like. That will be shared to you by your schools very soon, and then also available on the CMS webpage shortly. And then we'll also have some sessions for families where they can ask questions and get some support and kind of get a preview of what's coming. So I think that families will have a very different experience with that than they did this past spring.
I know there are lots more questions that our community and our family and our students and our staff and teachers want answered about this specific topic about the full remote academy. And I just want to give you each an opportunity to have a last word about this opportunity for students and what they think, what you think it can bring to our families. And Dr. Barnes, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I think the only thing I would add is that this is a decision that's very personal and particular to each family for their child. There is no wrong decision. I think for the most part, the experience, the instructional experience is going to be comparable whether you're in the full remote academy or you're in the remote Plan B plus. But if you have any concerns at all about your child returning to a brick and mortar building, if our district goes to Plan B because of a change in our public health conditions, this is something I think you should consider. We're still working out some details across the board that we want to get right by August 17th, but we're excited to have the privilege to educate your children and to serve you. Thank you.
Dr. Ann White, what comments do you have for our community?
I would say I am just really thankful that we have this option. I think when you think about students with disabilities, along with all of the other students in our district, the variation of student need is vast. And so I would concur with Frank. It's really important for families to consider what is best for their individual children. And even within a family, students have different learning needs. So this is an opportunity for parents to make a choice specifically based on the needs of individual children. And I'm glad that we have this option.
Ms. Craven-Howell, your comments?
Yeah, I mean, first I would just, like to thank our families for choosing CMS, first and foremost. And as they continue to choose CMS, I would hope that families understand that, all of our choices this year, again, have just been about the health and safety of our students and our staff. As it relates to some of the questions around magnet themes and career and technical education, and really just, kind of specialty and unique courses, just know that the district is making every effort to make sure that students can have all of those same experiences, whether they are in Plan B plus or if they're in the full remote academy. And there will certainly be some differences between what the in-person instruction experience would be. But that said, we are very much committed to having the most consistent learning experience we can provide for our students.
And Ms. King.
Speaking as a parent, this is a hard decision for families. Part of that is the idea of looking 6 months ahead and thinking, oh my gosh, are we still going to be where we are now? Things are challenging right now, and this can be an emotional decision for families to make, just with logistical challenges and frustrations. And I think it's really important for our kids that they know that their parents and their teachers and their schools are working together. We are a team. Under challenging conditions, we are going to work together to make this the very best experience that it can be for our kids, no matter if that's the full remote academy or Plan B plus or any other plan that evolves throughout the year. We are in this together, and we're going to do what's the best for kids.
Well, thank you all for joining us here tonight for this back to school Q&A session focusing on the full remote academy. And for our viewing audience out there, we know that you have important decisions to make in the coming days. And if you need additional information to help you find the best way forward for your student, you can visit the CMS webpage at www.cms.k12.nc, and you will find some additional information, and we will update as many questions as we can on that site so that if you didn't hear the answer to your specific question tonight, then if you go to our website, we'll provide those additional answers to the best of our ability. We know there's quite a few that you have out there. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this event, we have outstanding leaders in CMS. We have outstanding principals at every school. They're preparing a way forward for you as well and your child and your student. Reach out to your schools and find out additional information if you need to find out more information. I also want to note that registration for the Full Remote Academy ends this Sunday, July 26th at 11:59. This Sunday, July 26th at 11:59. We hope that you receive some information today that will help you make an informed decision. On behalf of our CMS Superintendent, Ernest Winston, and the Board of Education, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, and stay safe and stay healthy.